Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Iyori Folani alongside Cyril Abaku.
A very good morning to you, sir.
Indeed, good
Good
morning
morning.
and indeed to Nigerians. It's the season of increases. Increases that Nigeria is finding, well, when I say Nigeria, I mean we the people, finding quite hard to digest. There must be good reason to it though. Maybe we just don't know it.
It's possible.
Well, let's take them one after the other. First of all, we got notice that in fact, the federal government actually announced the increase in the electricity tariff. Those ones, they didn't waste any time. They swung into action. So now we shall be paying something like double, right? Okay. After that, there's the petrol wahala. Suddenly, that one too, one after the other, as I said. Let's start off with electricity. And we have, to help us understand it, a man who would know much more than, or better than most, Dr. Sam Amadi. He's former executive chair, National Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC. Good morning, Dr. Amadi.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Indeed. Well, what? Maybe I just invite you to say, what exactly is your perspective on this impending hardship, let it be said, that Nigerians are about to bear?
Well, I think, well, in history, mankind have been faced with challenges. So we've seen the COVID, we're still on it. Yes, it's going to be a hardship to some or most Nigerians, but it should be a good thing if this hardship, so to say, quote unquote, can lead to improvement, relief down the line. So basically, we expect that the new tariff will be a challenge to some persons. It could lead to underconsumption for those who can't afford it, especially with the perfect storm of COVID, of loss of employment expected in the sectors, of loss of revenue, and of course, increasing poverty as we should expect based on both the IMF, World Bank, and the MBS projections. So primarily, there'll be other consumption. Of course, people pay more, and the idea of paying more for anything, whether it is gas, it's electricity, it's all kinds of bill, is that you can under consume from health, education. You have less.
We've also heard, and I think it's sort of implied in your response, that it will help us. This increase will actually help us get better with the supply of electricity. More. Well, maybe you heard a sound right there. That it would indicate it sounded digital, as if something happened. But we have excellent quality from Dr. Sam Amadi. So as soon as we can get him back. The other thing that we're hearing, Cyril, is that, well, this increase, I don't know who even put that one forward. This increase is going to enable us to get a lot more efficient and better in the supply of electricity. To which a lot of people are then responding, why are you putting the cart before the horse? Why didn't you show us that it's been better? Or has it indeed been better? What do you think, Cyril?
Shouldn't we even be more curious that up until now, we do not know exactly what we're paying for or what we're even going to be paying for? What we have is about what you're going to be paying per kilowatt hour. What does that mean? What is kilowatt hour? I haven't seen from any of the federal channels where anybody has taken the time or the pains to respect me, the customer, and say, Cyril, this is what you're going to be paying per minute or per second or per hour or per week.
Well, okay.
In the breakdown.
Yeah, but that's the sort of energy unit of
the
energy
unit
charge.
price, but you don't communicate in technical jargon. You let me know what it is because I'm paying for it. That is one. Number two, at a time.
Dr. Madi is back. Okay. Great to have you back, Sam. The other thing is that I wanted to, just before you went off, I was going to say, what do you think of the argument, or shall we say explanation, that we are getting that this increase is going to enable those concerns to do a much better job of the supply of electricity to the end user? Although you probably are aware that some have said, why didn't you show us this first before increasing the price? Or is it your understanding that the supply has indeed improved in some aspects?
Well, I think the customers are right. I think there's a very poor communication of this tariff increase now. What I expect is that the regulator and other stakeholders should explain more. So if you're talking about service level contracts, service improvement tariff, it means that you have to show exactly what it is that will improve. Yes, there could be some improvement in the sector in some areas, but essentially the price increase itself will not drive improvement. Your guest says something that's important. Stakeholder engagement. Yes, NEC mandates, but it doesn't look like the discourse took that very seriously. Stakeholder engagement means that you have to explain to people what will change. For example, talk about the poor will pay less. What does that mean? It simply means people are going to consume less than 50 kilowatt per hour. And what that translates for is very minimal. It probably is about 3 or 4 bulbs. It doesn't cater for those who have television, iron board, and things like that. Those who have AC, those who are going to use washing machine and all kinds of refrigerator. So primarily, the communication in the sector is very bad. 2 is the fact that we should create greater customer engagement with the disco so that they know exactly what to improve. How many hours of electricity, if you are doing an average of, let's say, 8 or 10 or 12 hours. With this new tariff, the commitment is 12 hours. And consumers know it is 12 hours. So that when it doesn't happen, consumers can get back to the regulator, and then the tariff may be marked down. Incentive regulation means that the tariff is tied to performance indicators that are measurable, enforceable, and clear, so that you will ramp up efficiency, so that even though customers are paying more, they are getting more service. And the government's commitment to improvement will be real. What I hear now is fluffy. It's like, okay, this tariff will incent better performance, but how do you measure it? How do you move around to create it? How do you enforce it? How do you even ensure that operators themselves will improve their service? Think about metering. The president has announced mass metering, but that's a policy announcement. How about the financing? How about the logistics for deployment? What is on ground? What's the framework? How do we see? So by now, the Minister of Power and the regulator should be laying clear the framework for enforcing Mr. President's mass metering, because basically in this sector, mass metering is a given. The regulation says you must meter all customers. So day one, you ought to mass meter everybody. But the point is that we've not done this as a legacy of over 30 years of no metering or poor metering. How do you want to change that? So we are not yet, getting even with the customer. We're not playing fair with the customer. We need to let them know. It's true that the sector is almost getting bankrupt. And we need this tariff increase to hopefully get more revenue and then unlock investment, hopefully from the private investors. And of course, the World Bank and other support is tied to a sense in which cost tariff is in the sector. But having said that, it's obligatory on the managers of this network to communicate more. That's what's missing. There's no communication. Yes, price can go up. People can be asked to bear some hardship, but with a clear understanding of where we're going to, clear understanding of what to improve, and even clear understanding of why this tariff increase is necessary. So even as an enlightened customer who has been past chairman of the Regulatory Commission, I don't see myself, kind of understanding, except because I do a lot of reading in these areas. I teach and write on this area, so I understand. But as a customer, I don't moving this, know what has happened, what has changed, what will change. So see myself as a enlightened customer who is not part of the network. I will say, look, I don't understand this policy, and that's the major.
Now, Sam, just before my colleague who is we're on air together, Cyril Abaku, asked his own question. I wanted to know, where would you put the blame for this phenomenon that you've just described, this lack of proper communication? Okay. It's freezing, but we're doing good. We're doing good. It's been a lot better than yesterday. So I wonder where this is. I wonder where Dr. Sam Amadi where would it put it? Would it be on the part of the regulators, on part of government? Because as he says, and as everybody has been complaining, you're just hitting us. We don't know.
Overnight.
We don't know what's going on.
In fact,
all we do know is that our income that has not increased now where is the effective income that we have?
So my concern would be, how do we build the capacity of the consumer?
Dr. Madi, just before we go to, just before Cyril asks his question, I wanted to know where you put the blame for this situation where we haven't been properly informed. Was it with the regulatory body? Is it with government itself that must have okayed all of this? Because it might lead to labor problems, as you well know.
Well, I think it would be wrong to blame government. I would rather, because in a regulated market, government is supposed to be invisible, because the regulator is the one that stands between the government, so to say, and the market, even though regulatory commissions are part of government. So I won't blame government for not communicating much, because government basically lays general policy and the regulator drives it. So primarily the regulator, maybe tactically, is not getting involved too much. Tariff increase a risk, a reputational risk. If you don't manage it well, you can be damned. So some regulators shy away, but that's not the right way to go. We did about 2 or 3 tariff increases, and we came up front to say, look, this is what ought to be done. And you take the bullets. That's what the regulator should do. You come and communicate. People will see the passion and the sincerity and the credibility, and they will believe. Those tariff increases we did, it was difficult. Labor came against us. We had several meetings. We went to all the channels. As a chairman, I was there speaking myself, because we believed that those tariffs should increase. Although, people may disagree with us. But so I think the regulator should do more in terms of stepping up. The operators themselves, the discos, are the ones who ought to be on the front line, talking to the customers, holding meetings. They are shying away. They are being cynical. They say, oh, it's government. Mm-hmm. And the government regulator is hiding, is discos. Someone should step up and own this game and say, this is why this is happening. And the discos should be forced by the regulator to go out to their customers, start having focus group meetings, dealing with labor unions in their service jurisdiction, talking to workers, talking to consumer groups, and say, this is what why we need this tariff. And this is the data facing the market. This tariff ought to have been increased like 6, 7, 8 months ago. We have borne these losses. We want to improve service. This is the new benchmark you should expect us. And that's what creates the confidence, so that government will be insulated. But now government is exposed. By the time labor is on the street, by the time everyone is on the street, the loser is government, because people don't care about regulator or care about operator. This is about government. This is about service to the people. This is about citizens' right to essential services. So I think that the operators have been totally mischievous in this game. They want this tariff, but they don't want to step up. The regulator is afraid of being hit with some heavy missile from, of course, citizens who are not going to be happy. Nobody likes to pay more, but somebody should take the risk to show why we should pay more.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Madi, my question would be this. Talking about efficient service and building the capacity of consumers to be able to hold power suppliers to account. So, for instance, there's been an increase in tariffs, but how does someone who hasn't enjoyed power supply maybe for a month or 2 come to terms with the fact that there's a bill piling up for him to pay, and he does not, it would seem like he does not have a means of seeking redress? How can consumers hold these discos to account, to make sure that this tariff increase notwithstanding, there is actual efficiency in service delivery?
Very good question. I think that's why this underlies the problem of communication in the sector. The NEC has set up forum offices in all the states. I know that when I was there, the Eco Disco had their own in their office. Ikeja had somewhere in Alausa. Forum offices are places where members of the civil society, sort of engineers, economists, and members of the community are a tribunal to determine issues. And whatever they decide is binding. You can also write to NEC. So there are mechanisms for customer redress. But the point that is not well communicated. Second point is that, like you said, the metering, the lack of metering is a problem here. Because when prices go up, the conservatory behavior of consumers is to reduce consumption. You put off your gadgets, you don't put a fan on or AC on where you don't need it. So you reduce your load, the bill you're going to pay, because your volume is dropping. But when you don't have a meter, it's a double whammy. You are exposed, you can't control your expenditure, and you are paying more, even when you're consuming less. So I think that the crisis in the sector is primarily that, look, this sector has high losses, this sector has low recovery of revenue, and this sector has low metering, so that the few people who are paying, who are unmetered, are the people who are going to suffer most, because they're going to pay higher bill per unit of power, and they are going to still have no capacity to measure what they pay or to control. Why would you put off your lights when you're going out, when at the end of the day, what you pay is not commensurate to what you consume?
Exactly.
It's a law, an allocation to you. So I think the crisis here is low metering, low communication, and then the regulator should perhaps do more to enter into this conflict between consumers and the operators. There will be disputes around rates and around billings, and we need to have greater accuracy, greater credibility with the way customers are billed. We don't have power, but then even with that scarcity, we can improve quality of service to consumers.
Okay. One of our viewers, Mr. George Inikeja, has called in. Good morning. You got a question for Dr. Amadi?
Yes, Uncle Yori. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, Dr. Amadi said that the government is not to blame. I disagree with that somehow. The government is to blame in the sense that the government is well aware that the people that is sold this NEPA to are not capable. That is the basis of all the problems we've been having. Unless it is solved from that point, issues like this will continue to come. They didn't put any reasonable investment there. They want to collect money from the public to use to do the business to serve public. You can't do business without using money to. When they came in, they were the same government that sold to them was subsidizing them with government money. Their investment is not there. How do you raise tariffs when there is no service? Many people are still complaining that they don't have adequate power supply. What is the basis of raising it by almost 100%?
Okay.
I cannot understand it. Why does the government incite the public against itself? There are policies that you just cannot defend. This is just one of them.
All right then. Thank you, Mr. George. Let me get Dr. Madi's remarks on that position.
Well, I think he didn't understand me. I'm not saying that the tariff is justified or not. I'm saying that when a government sets up a regulatory commission, the market does not expect. In fact, it's risky for government to be making pronouncements about the sector by the president or by the National Assembly, because the market will be jittery to know that decisions are made politically. It's the regulator who should be doing that. So my point is not that the tariff is right or wrong, is that government shouldn't be blamed for lack of communication. It's a regulator, except we are saying that the government controls them and the government forces them, or they're not independent anymore. The regulator's job is to be the one to communicate and take decisions. Okay. Because the government has already, by the law, said this is the framework. The framework says that you must allow efficient operators recover the actual cost of production. But that's the only way you can sustain improvement in the sector. And by the way, what the customers want most is power. If you have more power in the sector, power is about 30% or 40% of production cost, which means some of the goods and services in Nigeria are expensive because the cost of production is expensive. And therefore, the power becomes appropriate pricing, the power becomes available, they will stop supplying themselves to generators and spending more to produce goods. And overall, over time, the economy will be better. So my point is, look, even if this tariff is necessary, it should be justified to consumers.
Okay, I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Dr. Madi. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but there's another part to his question, to his contribution, where he made an assertion. I don't have the time to go into it now because another caller has come on the line. Good morning, Mazi Okoroafo. I'll probably get to that other part later. Good morning, Mazi Okoroafo.
Good morning, Mr. Yuri. Good morning, Mr. Siri. Good morning, Dr. Amadi.
Good morning,
my own concern this one is this. With this subsequent, both fuel pump price have increased to 163 or 161. And now the question is, if the federal government wants to increase the power sector in terms of the unit, the question is this: where are the meters? The meters are not there. They'll still go back to all these estimated deals. And all these things are going to affect all the sectors of the economy. Now, you know, as I'm talking to you right now, the mudu of Gareth that used to be, the everything have increased. Now, you come back home where we use all these NEPA lights for just daily, Baba and listener. I went in there with the man said, don't you know, he said the thing don't increase. I said, he said, instead of 150, it's now 300 naira. Now, all the increment, the workers' salary are still stagnant. Nobody's increasing the workers' salary. Now, if the federal government has just come back to all this, the Nigerian Labour Congress increment, they have balanced increment of workers' salary, even private sectors, public sectors, and name them. There is no problem. But now, my question to Dr. Amadi, now, the power increase is on. The workers' salary is still stagnant. How do you expect the workers, or how would the workers improve, or how would they cope? School fees, feeding, housing accommodation, water at the rate, and other rates. And they have children, both medical bills. How would they move? Is it not really up to high rate of corruption? And high rate of all these,
okay, Mazi, don't make it too compound a question. Thank you very much, Mazi Okora, for calling in. And Dr. Mahdi, the part of the answer to the previous question that you didn't get to was the assertion or allegation that government knowingly sold to people who didn't have the capacity to deliver.
Okay, I think we hear that claim all the time. Well, of course, government may have sold to people who don't have capacity, but the question is, were there people who had capacity who showed up and they didn't sell to them? No. But let's not forget that our network, Disco, Genco, collapsed in the 80s before the reform. And so no business people who know their worth were not ready to comfort. My argument has been that we should have privatized at that stage. And that's the argument I had when I was chairman, that the minister didn't like Baton Naji and others didn't like in BPE. My view remained the same. It was a mistake to have privatized at that point. We should have corporatized and commercialized and created entities that would have been viable for real operators to come and take over. So our brothers and sisters who are business entrepreneurs coupled together some kind of joint venture, some kind of consortium, and borrowed money from our banks and bought these assets, and now they are stuck. They don't have capacity to borrow more to improve the network. If we had the money we have been spending since 2013 that they took over this network, if we had spent it in improving in fact, for 2005, if we had started seriously to improve the discos and the gencos, today we would have had a better company that we can now sell. Egypt had the same process. Egypt has not privatized. They are planning to privatize around 2024. Started by commercializing tariffs that are good, corporate governance, but because we don't like to allow merit, so our public sector cannot allow politics, keep politics away and allow the best guys to run the place. So if you had the right guys run the old NEPA under a regulatory commission like NEC now, would have created a strong company that the like of Tata and others can buy. So we sold to those who are available. We were sold to those who wanted to buy because the asset, for example, until I did the first audit account for NEPA, NEPA didn't have an audited account for all the years they were there. It was in 2012 we did that. Today, they still don't have proven customer numbers, credible data for analytics. So which very strong company should have come in 2013 to buy an asset in an economy that's not reliable, in a policy environment that's flip-flop. So we just got what we could get then. The policy error was to have sold at that stage.
Okay, Dr. Mahdi, I'm going to have to interrupt you again. Sorry, Dr. Mahdi, I'm going to have to interrupt you again because the calls are coming thick and fast, possibly because of the crucial aspect of what we're talking about. Mr. Maduka in the UK, good morning, sir. Mr. Maduka, are you still there? Calling in from the UK.
Yeah. Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. You got a comment, question?
Again, I'm happy to be with you again.
Indeed. It's our pleasure.
Another interesting topic.
Do you have a question for Dr. Mahdi?
The major issue we have here is, just like I said yesterday, our governments are good at balkanizing our performing institutions and sharing it among themselves. Look at this electricity thing. I do not see how somebody can be talking of increasing tariffs on a service that is not there. It's a simple mathematics. I can tell you that if we have this supply of electricity in Nigeria constantly, nobody will be complaining about any increase. People will rather be talking about how to save costs by themselves, by regulating. For example, here I live, I have meter for my water. I don't use shower again to bath. I put water in the bucket because it's my responsibility now to control how much I spend because the water is always there. If you are not careful, you waste it. Meter is the answer. And they know it. If we don't have the houses metered, these businessmen will be capitalizing on the benefits of estimated bills for services, and I think it's stealing. It is completely stealing.
Okay, Mr. Maduka, I'm so sorry. We did get, your contribution, but time is totally against us. And thank you very much for calling in. As a matter of fact, Dr. Maduka, we'd like to thank you as well. I beg your pardon, Dr. Sam Amadi. Where did Dr. Madi? Okay, I transposed the people. So, Dr. Madi, thank you very much for coming on and giving us the benefit of your perspective on all of this. I don't know, it's still a live subject because the bottom line is that our income has not increased, and now services has not improved, and now this is going to take more out of the barely managing income that we have. Once more, thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi. Okay, so we'll go on a break now. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. We'll look at yet another niggling one. Let's look at the full petrol thing now. We won't have light at all. Now to drive self. Okay, welcome back. Our guest this time is Mr. Balazaka, our long-time friend, oil and gas expert, but this time he's going to be analyzing for us, as it were. Thank you, as always, for coming on, Bala.
Thank you, sir.
And now, everybody is surprised, because we thought this kind of a thing, we had a more orderly kind of a progression nowadays. But we just come out of the energy situation into the fuel, petrol situation. Now, it's a bit confusing, but we were saying before we came on air, you were saying that, no, it's not confusing at all. It's the model we chose.
Yes, it's not confusing. I'm highly disappointed, but I am not surprised at all.
How's that?
I'm not surprised at all. Because based on the kind of concepts that we have been using, based on the kind of approaches that we have been using, based on the kind of models that we have been using, I am not surprised at all. I will not be surprised if tomorrow somebody calls me within Lagos and says the transport fare from Bega to Tafawa Balewa Square is 1,000 naira. I will not be surprised if somebody calls me from Port Harcourt and says the transport fare from Rumokuta Junction to Rumokoro or Rumola is 1,000 naira. I will not be surprised at all if somebody calls me from Kaduna and says the transport fare from Sabo to Kasua is 500 naira. In Maiduguri, where I had my primary school and secondary school education, I will not be surprised at all if somebody calls me from Goenge and tells me that the transport from Goenge to Bulabulin, Okri, Kasama is 1,000 naira. And finally, I will not be surprised if somebody calls me from Sokoto, where I was as a youth, and tells me that the transport from Giginya to Kalambaina is 1,000 naira.
Now, all of this,
I will not.
All of this tends to give the impression that we have an anything goes kind of a situation.
Yes, but this for the first time, I am not blaming the government. I am blaming the citizens of Nigeria, especially the technocrats, the intellectuals, and the economic pundits. They are those I am blaming. When some of us were saying that we should accept that Nigeria is not a developed economy. Nigeria is an emerging economy. Nigeria was an importing nation. Nigeria was progressing backwards. Nigeria was having a weak currency, and we needed to do something about it. A lot of people didn't accept. When some of us were saying that we needed to be careful about the sectoral economic mechanisms we are going to apply, especially for the downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas industry, people didn't believe it. Privatization is a good concept. Liberalization is a good concept. Commercialization is a good concept. Even deregulation is a good economic restructuring mechanism. But you need to look at the sectors before you apply them. When you are talking about an emerging economy, when you are talking about a country that is an importing nation, when you're talking about a country with a weak currency and a country that is dealing with a product that has no substitute, deregulation is the worst and the bad concept you are supposed to apply. And I will explain it quickly. You can deregulate and be comfortable when a product has substitute. Petrol has no substitute. You cannot put any other thing inside a car. You can deregulate prices of water. There is a place I can go and take water, a bottle of water at 1,000 naira. No problem. I can drink sachet water. I can go dig a well, get water. I can go to the river, come clean it, tidy it up. That is substitute. When you even talk about like hospitality, whether hotels, even beer, there is a place I can go, or soft drink, I can buy a soft drink for 100 naira. Depending on another place where I go, I have the option of buying it at 1,000 naira. But when you are dealing with a product that has no substitute, and that is the product that is supposed to drive an economy, especially at a lower level, the biggest mistake you are going to do is to adopt the concept of deregulation. As I speak to you today, virtually prices of everything have gone up. Another practical example is this. Oshodi, even people who have not been to Lagos have heard of a place called Oshodi. Oshodi market is a popular market. Rice comes to Oshodi market. Fish comes to Oshodi market. Gari comes to Oshodi market. Cows come to Oshodi market. Palm oil. All these food items we are talking about are not being grown or processed in Lagos. They come from different parts of the country. The only way they can get here is through buses and petrol or diesel. And you have
So
a
this is
deregulated economy. You deregulate that.
Okay, let me bring on Fred Nziako. Fred Nziako, he's a lawyer and a development economist. He's joining us via Skype. Good morning, Fred. Okay, good morning, Fred. Can you hear us?
I can hear you very well. Good morning.
Excellent. I'd like you to weigh in on this, especially well, you just heard what Mr. Zakat just said. First of all, do you concur? Are there points of departure? Because, you know, I was saying that it looks like anything goes almost, where people can just do us anyhow, as we say locally.
Well, I think to a very large extent, I agree with the position maintained by Bala Zakar because of the nature and the structure of our economy. I dare add that even if government feels that the regulation is an option, even if government feels that it is an inevitable option, so to speak, I expected that government should have looked further and deeper into the effect, both immediate, short-term and long-term effect of such policies on the life of the people, on the economic productivity of the people, and on everything generally that has to do with the welfare of the people. We expected that being a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, that policies that seek to improve one aspect of government, which is revenue, and reduce another aspect of government, which is expenditure, that it must also take into consideration the welfare of the people. And in carrying out such policies, government must balance it with alternatives and options available. But I talked about options. Yes, government cannot tell us that there are no options. The options are wide and varied. One, if you want to show up revenue, how do you go about it? Is it by increase in taxation? If you want to increase taxation, what kind of taxation model do you want to adopt? Is it a progressive or retrogressive or repressive tax system? Is it the tax system that will rob the poor against the rich, or the tax system that will redistribute income and earnings among the various economic players? If you want to go by way of reduction of government expenses, what has government put in place to reduce expenses? Because when we talk about budgeting is about income versus expenditure. If the income is not increasing, then you should try as much as possible to reduce the expenses so that you come to an equitable balance. What efforts are government making, government at all levels, state and federal, to reduce expenses so that there will not be incidences of undue fleecing, unnecessary punishment of the people as to increase income? That is where the economic model being adopted by government is a very worrisome model. A model that does not seek to reduce expenses but always seeks to increase revenue is a model that does not consider the welfare of the people. Now, at the micro level, everything, virtually the price of everything has gone up. Everything from household to services to consumables to everything has gone up. In an economy where there's no much reflation of the system, in an economy where the productivity has not increased correspondingly, don't you feel and see that the net effect is unnecessary shrinking of the welfare of the people?
Okay.
And what it now means is that the standard of living of Nigerians, based on their disposable income, will so drastically reduce to the point that more poor people will be produced by the system, and it has its own effect on the citizenship patriotic zeal to support their government. So it has economic, social, and political impact on the lives of the people. And it is a policy that needs to be looked into very deeply, and a robust policy that will correct all these errors need to be adopted as urgently as possible.
Okay, one moment, Fred. Thank you. Mr. Yakub has called in. Good morning, Mr. Yakub.
Yeah, Chief Jolly, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And then good morning to Mr. Saka.
Good morning,
and then
sir.
The other guest on the other side, Mr. Fred. Chief Jolly, for the first time, I called to disagree with Mr. Saka because I'm one of his fans. I always follow him everywhere he goes to. You see, the reason is this. Mr. Saka says that he is not going to blame the government this time around, rather than blame the citizens, especially the middle class and elite. You see, Mr. Saka, I blame the government. I'm one of the Nigerian citizens that support this government to become a government because I campaign for them in my own capacity, believing that when they got to the power, they will change all the wrongdoing that the past government have been making. For example, let me give you a typical example here. The last government sold the NEPA to their colleagues, and then knowing that they don't have the ability to give us the line. Now, they put clause in that very particular deal that if government come tomorrow want to change that very particular deal, they are going to pay through to their nose. That is why it's very difficult for this incumbent government to change that very particular deal. Now, they wanted to increase the power. Now, what is the parameter given to us? What is the parameter given to us to increase the fuel? Because the worker of this country, their salary was not going up. How much is the rice today? Even the local rice, when they block the border, and then they always for the cartel. Now they are forming the cartel.
So,
people producing rice.
So, Mr. Yakub, you blame government.
They make sure that the rice is cut in the
right?
I'm talking about.
Thank you very much for calling in.
Actually, I was supposed to use the word. I am annoyed with the intellectuals, the technocrats.
You did say so.
Yes, I'm actually annoyed, but I wanted to be soft. That was why I said I blame them. The reason why I blame them was because when the concept of deregulation was being discussed, some of us said it was going to be the wrong concept. But a lot of them said no. And I told them that as at that time they were talking like that, they were telling government what was good, but not what was right. Because something can be good, but is not right. But anything that is right, whether it's a concept or an approach or a philosophy, it will always end up being good. The reason why some of us were saying this was because we knew that the concept of deregulation will make Nigerians poorer. We knew that. And we knew that many Nigerians didn't understand what deregulation meant. Remember, I've been following this chronology. I had this chronology for probably like 20 years. So it has even, right from the time we came into democracy, so it has nothing to do with a political dispensation. But in the course of this discussion, I will talk about two people. You know, they are not among the living, but I will talk to you about them. So what is happening is this. We are living in a system where Nigeria is supposed to be a regional power. What makes you a regional power? A regional power is your ability to be able to have a very strong security and a strong economy. If Nigeria were to be organized, let me tell you, and we refine internally and we Nairanize the downstream, not the upstream, by now we should be the ones supplying distillates to the whole of West Africa. That on its own will make us to have regional control. You are living in a country where, as I speak to you today, we just came, we are not even through with COVID-19. So many people have lost their jobs. Because of the insecurity in Nigeria, so many harvest crops, people couldn't go to farms, so we don't have crops to harvest. Because of the flood as we speak now, even some of the farmlands that have been cultivated, you know, have suffered. We have lost them to flood. We have lost cultivation to insecurity. We know that also because of this COVID-19, you know, people have lost their jobs. The only reason why the government will be behaving like that was because at some point the middle class sold this and accepted the concept of deregulation. Do you know there was something they were saying? I faulted it, but people made me to look like a lone ranger. They were saying that we were subsidizing consumption. We were subsidizing consumption, and I told them, in Nigeria, when you say the rich are consuming more of this petrol, do they drink it? They don't drink it. Look at a place like Lagos. Where can you even drive your car to? So when you say you are subsidizing the rich, if a rich man has 10 cars, he is likely to have up to 4 drivers. Those drivers are working. If you continue to increase these prices, like, I mean, these prices like this, it will just get to a point where the economy will grind to a cul-de-sac.
Okay, I wonder, Alhaji Subaya, good morning.
Yes, Mr. Yori, you have given me a long time, you know. Yes, good morning and good morning to your guests.
Good morning, sir.
Sorry about that, Alhaji.
Let me tell you, first of all, let me say, for the first time, I would disagree with Mr. Bala in the sense of what? Federal government cannot, you know, put their own laxity, their failure to the masses. You know, look, our government continues to go front and backward. This is a government that told us...
Okay, when you say you disagree, I wanted to understand it. You disagree with Mr. Bala, meaning that government should be blamed. But I think that's the disagreement. Mr. Zaka said, I won't blame government. Your disagreement is that I do blame government. Is that not so, Alhaji? Well, we've lost him.
When I say I don't blame government, I'm actually more than mad at government. But what is happening is when when government wanted to come up with this concept of deregulation, it was the middle class that supported the concept. And I told them, and you see, what the reason why I'm upset with the technocrats, the pundits, you know, and the intellectuals was because they didn't allow some of us to explain what deregulation means. A lot of the lower class people think the regulation will mean if you move it from 87 to 150, that will be final. There will be no increment again. But I told them that as long as we are an emerging economy, we have a weak currency, and we remain an importing nation, price of petrol will get to 150 one day. It will get to 180, 200, 250, 300, 500 naira per liter. We will get there. The only reason why we will get there is because in the concept of deregulation, government will literally pull out and you are free to go and bring it and sell it at any amount. I told you before that I wanted to talk about two Nigerians.
Yes, but we do have Fred Isiako is still there.
Okay.
This scenario.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, this scenario that has just been painted, it seems like an end time scenario almost. Do you agree?
What do you want that scenario? Sorry. What do you mean by end time scenario?
With deregulation, it will continue to
it will continue ad infinitum
forever.
And we'll get to a stage, if we're not careful, where you can have 500 naira for a liter.
Yes.
There is nothing wrong with deregulation if it is done properly. I blame government. I disagree with Bala about the issue of who holds the blame. I blame government 100% because it is a government policy. Even if the technocrats and the middle class had supported the regulation, are you telling me that it is the support that they gave that has driven government to the nature and the type of regulation that they have done? When we talked about the regulation, we said that for every policy, there has to be some fundamentals. The fundamentals that needed to be put in place are: one, ensure that our refineries are working; two, ensure that even the new licenses given for modular refineries and new refineries are put in place as we speak. None of those private refineries licenses, about 18 of them that was given out in 2005, 2006, none of them is working, apart from the one that is being done by Dangote today. And the operators who got that license cried that NNPC was a player and a regulator, and that it was wrong for NNPC to be a player and regulator at the same time. They were placing cog in the wheel of progress. They now put the thing in 4 stages, such that after stage 1, you go to stage 2, and if you fail in stage 3, you cannot go to stage 4, and all the money you have spent in stages 1, 2, and 3 will go down the drain. That the policy did not encourage domestic refining. And we have started to high heavens that government must do something about it. And that is why the private refineries are not coming up.
Okay, Fred, I'm afraid I've got to interrupt you. It's the almighty dictator, time, once again. Fred Nziako, that's as much as we can take. We've completely run out of time. Even I have to say the same to you in studio, Mr. Balazaka. We've completely run out of time. But I want to thank you both, gentlemen, and indeed people who called in, for giving us some perspective on this whole matter. So that's our program today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Falani. Bye-bye for now.